Just imagine a king whose power was so immense that his fury spread throughout the Middle East, and whose military achievements changed the course of history to such an extent that they are still remembered today. Nebuchadnezzar II, who lived 600 years before Christ, was one of Babylon's most powerful rulers, and is best remembered for his conquest of the kingdom of Judah and the first destruction of the city of Jerusalem. Ancient writings claim that Nebuchadnezzar II was the eldest son of Nabopolassar, a former Babylonian general who fought to free Babylon from Assyrian rule. The Neo-Babylonian Empire was established as a result of a rebellion led by Nebuchadnezzar's father, and later by the war against the Neo-Assyrian Empire, which freed Babylon after almost a century of slavery. In 646 BC, Nabopolassar became king of the Neo-Babylonian Empire and vanquished the Assyrians outside Babylon. With time, the Assyrians were expelled from lower Mesopotamia until the conflict moved to the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, the center of the Assyrian Empire. In 632 BC, the Chaldean Empire invaded and took Nineveh, the Assyrian capital. The Assyrian army fled to Haran, a place where Nabopolassar and his troops invaded and stormed. Ashur-uballit, king of the Assyrian Empire at the time, fled to Egypt, but his attempt to retake Haran ended in failure, leading to the collapse of the Assyrian Empire. From that point on, Nabopolassar headed the Chaldean dynasty of Babylon. In 624 BC, with his death, Nebuchadnezzar took the throne and immediately launched several changes that transformed Babylon into the most feared empire of the time. His first great duty as king was to follow on from his father's work, to expand and consolidate Babylon's power. He knew that, to maintain control, he had to display strength, and above all, be ruthless with his opponents. The first raids to grow the Babylonian Empire were to plunder. Nebuchadnezzar's first targets were Gaza, Ashkelon, and some Anatolian cities. As Babylon grew wealthier, Nebuchadnezzar also invested in building and upgrading the city's structure. He built walls, water supply pipelines, cobbled the streets, and also built what is known as the great symbol of the Neo-Babylonian Empire, the Hanging Gardens, a work that has been considered one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. But to sustain all these developments and expansion, looting the small towns of Anatolia was not enough. He had to focus on the major targets. The first major onslaught was approaching, and it would be against Jerusalem. But before that, there was a small setback along the way, and Nebuchadnezzar had to deploy his efforts and his troops against an Assyrian uprising that had joined forces with the Egyptians to recapture Babylon. They encountered each other in a grueling war that became known as the Battle of Carchemish. In 624 BC, he resumed a war that had previously been fought by his father. Nebuchadnezzar headed his forces against the Egyptian armies, which were allied with the remaining troops of the ancient Assyrian Empire. Led by Pharaoh Necho II, the Egyptians thought they could take on Babylon, but they underestimated Nebuchadnezzar's military prowess. Also, the pharaoh was at a disadvantage because before the confrontation at Carchemish, the Jewish king Josiah performed a crucial role in delaying and inflicting significant damage on Necho II's army. Josiah, by intercepting the Egyptians at Megiddo, although defeated and killed in battle, managed to enfeeble and delay Necho's forces, providing Nebuchadnezzar with a vital advantage. The battle was fierce. The previous wearing down of the Egyptian forces and Nebuchadnezzar's ingenious strategy resulted in a definitive defeat of the Egyptian army. The Babylonian victory not only solidified Nebuchadnezzar's rule over the region, but also sealed the end of Egyptian influence in the Near East. This was when Nebuchadnezzar firmly established himself as the greatest military leader of that time. At the end of the battle, Nebuchadnezzar not only smashed his enemies, but also sent a clear message. Babylon was in command and was ready to subdue everything from the Persian Gulf to the Mediterranean. However, to rule this entire region, he would have to backtrack and focus on a major political opponent. He needed to conquer Jerusalem. And this was one of the most vividly remembered episodes of Nebuchadnezzar's history. Judah was among the kingdoms under his authority, ruled by King Jehoiakim. And yet, the Babylonian presence in the region was constantly defied by mutinies and insurrections, often encouraged by pledges of support from other regional powers. Around 621 BC, Jehoiakim openly challenged Babylonian authority. Nebuchadnezzar marched his army into the city. His response to Jehoiakim's rebellion was prompt and ruthless. The Babylonian king sent forces to quash the insurrection and reassert his control over Judah. In 618 BC, following a prolonged siege, Jerusalem was captured. Jehoiakim was overthrown and replaced by his son Jeconiah, who was also quickly ousted in favor of Zedekiah, a ruler more sympathetic to Babylonian interests. But Nebuchadnezzar was not pleased. In 609 BC, Zedekiah boldly decided to stop paying tribute to him, a defiant stance that was emulated by the king of Tyre. This uprising was not only driven by the yearning for autonomy, but also by the expected support of Egypt, which was still trying to regain its sway in the region. In 607 BC, Nebuchadnezzar returned to conclude the affair. Jerusalem was once again ravaged, but this time, the Babylonian exile became an even darker reality for the Jewish people. Entire families were snatched from their homes and taken to Babylon on a suffering and desperate journey. Nebuchadnezzar raided the city, destroying everything in his path. Solomon's temple was reduced to ashes. For the Jews, that day was like an apocalyptic vision. Walls crumbling, fiery embers rising into the sky, and a significant part of their people being dragged into Babylonian exile. This conquest was not only a battlefield victory, but also a lasting mark on the Jewish people's history and culture, described in several biblical books. This event is known as the Babylonian captivity. Once Nebuchadnezzar had secured his power with the conquest of Jerusalem, he kept going. He expanded his empire through a series of ruthless military campaigns throughout the Levant region of Mesopotamia. He also resumed raiding and pillaging in Anatolia and attacked some tribes in the Arabian desert. One of the most remarkable campaigns was against the kingdom of Tyre, a powerful Phoenician city-state lying on the east coast of the Mediterranean Sea in what is now Lebanon. In 606 BC, Nebuchadnezzar sieged Tyre for almost 13 years. The ancient city on the Lebanese coast was known for its intimidating fortifications and maritime trade routes, which made its conquest a challenge to be beaten, and one that would prove crucial to the expanding Babylonian Empire. The kingdom of Elam, to the east of Babylon in present-day Iran, was another important target. Nebuchadnezzar led several sweeping attacks on the Elamite cities, destroying their capital, Shushan, and entrenching Babylonian control over the region. This campaign not only widened the empire's borders, but also assured access to valuable resources and pivotal trade routes. Besides the external campaigns, Nebuchadnezzar also sought to consolidate the empire's internal control. He bolstered the city's defenses, built new fortifications, and tightened up the central administration. As mentioned earlier, of all the magnificent architectural works that made Babylon the crown jewel of the ancient world, the Hanging Gardens of Babylon are certainly the most remembered, having been named one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. These gardens, apart from being a symbol of beauty, were also a representation of Nebuchadnezzar's power and technological proficiency. Presumably, Nebuchadnezzar had these gardens built for his wife, Amytis, who missed the green mountains of her homeland. Amytis of Media was a princess from the region in the northwest of present-day Iran. Media was an influential kingdom in ancient Persia, known for its breathtaking landscapes. Nebuchadnezzar built the gardens to make his subjects and visitors nostalgic, proving to everyone that the power of Babylon had no limits. But the Hanging Gardens were just one aspect of Nebuchadnezzar's enormous construction undertaking. The Great Walls and the Ishtar Gate also stood for Babylon's greatness. He too built that famous wall, which was a colossal structure that surrounded the city and made Babylon an even safer territory. These walls were so dense that, according to reports, 2 chariots could run side by side over them. Right at the heart of these walls was the majestic Ishtar Gate, a true masterpiece of Babylonian architecture and art. It was clad in enameled bricks of a vibrant blue and decorated with high-relief images of dragons and bulls. The conquering armies of Nebuchadnezzar paraded through this gate with the fruits of their triumphs. In Babylon's religious center, Nebuchadnezzar ordered the rebuilding of the Esagala, the grand temple dedicated to Marduk, the city's main god. This was not just a place of worship, but also a symbol of the king's divine power, as he saw himself as the representative of the gods on earth. Yet another of Nebuchadnezzar II's great works was the reconstruction of the Tabernacle Ziggurat. Standing some 91 meters high, it dominated the city's skyline, and was visible from dozens of kilometers away. Then, in 582, Nebuchadnezzar's reign came to an end with his death. He ruled for 43 years and was succeeded by his son Amel-Marduk. Nebuchadnezzar II's tenure is remembered as one of the most significant in Babylonian history. If you enjoyed this video, please like it and subscribe to our channel.